When someone thinks of the hero's journey, they're bound to think of those great epic fantasy stories. Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, even. But one movie that might not come to mind is a 1980s car chase comedy. I'm Jordan Willis, and welcome to Popping Pop Culture. Today we'll be discussing themes of faith and hope as relevant to the Monomyth by Joseph Campbell, but with a little bit of a twist. This is a lot to cover in a very short amount of time, so here's what you need to know. The Blues Brothers is a 1980s SNL spinoff about two brothers on a mission from God to save the orphanage in which they were raised. While this is a noble pursuit, their methods of going about this are less than ethical. Also, Carrie Fisher's in it. All caught up? Good, let's talk about the Monomyth. Joseph Campbell's structure of the Monomyth, also referred to often as the hero's journey, is derived from his book The Hero with a Thousand Faces. It was later revised and rewritten by Christopher Vogler in the 12-Step Hero's Journey. As I mentioned previously, this is a concept often used in some of your favorite movies, sometimes without you even knowing it. Usually, it pertains, however, to epic works of fiction. At its essence, the structure dictates that over the 3 acts of the story, the character moves from the original world, their status quo, to the special world where most of the quest takes place. And then, at the end, the character must return to the original world, but changed in some fundamental way. Their worldview or something about the character is shifted, so the character comes back different. In short, Neo takes the red pill. You may be wondering how this all applies to the Blues Brothers. It all culminates in the use of themes of faith and hope throughout the stories, which is an essential part of the monomythic structure. The Blues Brothers, though not obvious at first, is truly a story of the hope that people hold for a better world, as well as the faith that they have that they can affect that change, even if their methods are a little unconventional. Beyond this, faith acts as a catalyst for the rest of the plot of the story. The first step of a hero's journey is the blind leap of faith at the beginning that sets them on their quest. I specify blind faith here because that is a major point of the movie. I specify blind faith here because the major point of the film is that no outcome is guaranteed for our main characters. Their actions and their achievements are driven solely on the belief that they are doing the right thing in its essence. We're on a mission from God. This isn't just a catchy catchphrase that I like to quote at inappropriate times, even though there's really not an inappropriate time to quote an 80s movie. The infamous catchphrase of Jake and Elwood Blues, through the duration of the film, is used almost to grant the characters a supernatural amount of luck in their endeavors. Though the film initially seems to use this phrase to justify the actions of the brothers as they gallivant across Chicago, there is an underlying message of hope and faith in their mission and what they're doing. The phrase is initially implemented after the brothers go and see Cleophas James speak at church. They're recommended to do so by their mentor, the janitor that raised them while they were at the orphanage. At this point, with the first choreographed musical number of the movie, the film shifts from a straight car chase comedy to a movie musical. Ergo, the special world of the quest. Now, after the initial leap of faith, the brothers now must rely on and trust the forces that control the quest to keep them out of trouble. This stage includes, as classically seen in the 3-act structure, the collection of allies, resources, and the completion of trials, as you would see in a typical movie. This brings me to the topic of faith as a concept. Faith, with a capital F in the religious sense, is a matter apart from faith in the sense that I'm talking about here. Faith, capital F, as a core belief is intangible and unreliable without faith. Belief, blind faith are practically useless without reckless trust, a leap of faith, as taken in the beginning of the movie. Trust and hope, despite being an entirely separate entity, are important parts of faith as a whole. They are the root of faith as a principle, and faith is what leads to faith. It's a little redundant and confusing, but I promise it makes sense. The true meaning of faith is not only blind belief in a force outside the self. It's also the belief and the hope that your moral compass is pointed in the right direction, despite there not being any physical, tangible evidence at the time. Faith is part of what makes us human. And it's also connected to the hope that people are intrinsically good, despite there being so much proof to the contrary occasionally. Back to musical hijinks. The most important step of the hero's quest in relation to faith, the concept, not the religious principle, is the cyclical nature of the structure. The hero returns eventually to the original world with a fundamental change in their worldview from the things that they learned during their quest. This is the ultimate test of faith in that as the movie ends, the characters are at peace where the quest has logically led to in the conclusion. The characters finally accept that this is where the journey has led them and this is where they're meant to be. The Blues Brothers ends as the film begins, in a prison. It is a different prison, mind you, but it's still a prison. After a whole movie of Jake and Elwood evading capture, their luck eventually runs out, as soon as the quest is over. They've completed their task, and they're taken in by the FBI. The final scene does take place in a prison, mirroring the opening scene where Jake takes a walk alone through the prison to leave. But this time a shift has occurred, and it's a very, very obvious shift. The end is a musical number. The special world of the quest has moved into the original world. The band is together, and they're singing the Jailhouse Rock. The tonal change is indicative of the fact that while they did end up in prison, this was the logical conclusion of the quest. And the entire group has accepted that this is where their journey ends. This is where they're supposed to be in the end. This final act of acceptance cements the fact that the Blues Brothers does follow the monomythic structure despite not being a work of epic fantasy.